Welcome to the Frankfort Area Chamber of Commerce 2020 Primary Candidate Forum. I'm Jacqueline Pitts, the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce Communications Director, and I'll be your moderator tonight. We want to thank our hosts and our partners, Frankfort Plant Board and Frankfort Plant Board Cable 10, for putting on tonight's event. All candidates in tonight's forum are running for state senate, and we are going to have everybody in the race give an opening statement of 1 minute, and then we will roll into candidate questions from our panelists. And each panelist question will be timed, and so your responses will be timed. And let's please be considerate with those times, because one, you will be muted if you go over your time limit, and we want to get to as many important questions as possible tonight. So every participant will be muted unless you are answering a question, and then you will be muted once your time runs up. We will also have clear indicators on the screen for the candidates of your time if you have 15 seconds left, and then when your time is expired. You should also all be prepared to give a 1 minute closing statements where no new issues are brought up. We're just going to cover your objectives and your goals in the race, and then we will close for the evening. So now I want to introduce everyone to our wonderful panelists. We have Kristen Cantrell, who is the owner and CEO of Seven Mountains Media and Froggy and Passport Radio. We have Kathy Lindsay, who is the communications director for the Frankfort Plant Board, and Steve Stewart, who is the publisher at the State Journal. And now I want to introduce everyone to our candidates. We have all of the candidates running in this race here with us tonight, and we will go in alphabetical order for responses and in this list. So we have Cleaver Crawford with us tonight, Katy Howard, Adrienne Southworth, Kalin Stutler, and Linda Thompson. So we're going to go ahead and get started with everybody's 1 minute opening statement, and we will begin with Cleaver Crawford.
Thank you for having me. My name is Cleaver Crawford. Everybody calls me by my middle name, Kirk, everyone that knows me anyway. I have always been in customer service my entire life. I work for Amazon at this time. I am one of your essential employees. You're welcome for getting your packages to you on time. I mainly started this back in September. I am a vapor. On September 11th, a lot of controversy came out about vaping and targeting children and so forth. And I decided that I was not going to stand around anymore and let the powers that be whittle away our rights, because I smoked for 30 years and vaping saved my life. I've got it right here. I keep it with me at all times. And so that's the reason why I decided that I was going to run, so that I could help keep our rights, and make government work for us.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to Katy Howard for her opening statement.
Hi, I'm Katy Howard. I am a constitutional conservative and member of the Republican Party. I am a Christian, a wife, and a mother, and a business person by trade. Big business, little business, my own business, family business. I am currently president of Anderson County Republican Women. But at my heart, I am a community servant. I've spent 2 decades serving in the community, mostly with the homeless and the poor. And I think that gives me a special ability to listen to people from all sorts of backgrounds and walks of life. And I listen, I learn, but then I do. I'm not just a talker. So I really like to accomplish. I think of myself just primarily as a business person and can bring those skills to bear in the Senate.
Thank you very much. We will now go to Adrienne Southworth.
Thank you. I'm Adrienne Southworth. As a former business owner in my personal time, I would go to Frankfort to help keep elected officials accountable. And what I found was meetings in Frankfort seemed to sometimes lack the real world understanding that really was needed for effective decision making. So in my time with Lieutenant Governor working with state agencies, I really saw on a daily basis where some of those disconnects were and what we really need to do to move the Commonwealth forward. So I know how to run a business. I also know the business of government, and that's why I'm running for state senate.
Thank you very much. We will now move to Kalin Stutler.
My name's Kalin Stutler. I'm a local realtor. I'm a local real estate broker and a home appraiser. I own my own real estate brokerage. I grew up in Frankfort. My family moved here in 1985. I grew up in Crestwood and Ridgeview, went to Elkhorn Elementary, ended up going to Frankfort High School. I've been a Republican, and I consider myself a platform Republican. There's a lot of people out there that aren't true Republicans, and they haven't read the platform, so they don't really know what they are. But I'm a Republican who believes in the platform as it's written. I'm a father of 3 adult children. I have 4 grandchildren. My kids all went to the public schools here in Franklin County. My grandchildren will be going to the schools here in Franklin County. And I believe we need representation in the majority party. That's something that, unfortunately, that's how government works. And if you want to have your voice heard, you're going to have someone in the majority party to get your voice heard.
Thank you very much. And we have Linda Thompson on the phone with us, so we will now turn it over to her for her opening statement.
Good evening, everybody. I apologize for holding you up this evening and for our technical difficulty. This is my first Zoom meeting, so I apologize for the delay. I want to thank the Frankfort Chamber for putting this forum on and for giving us the opportunity to speak to the voters of Senate District 7. My name is Linda Thompson, and I moved to Frankfort from Glasgow, Kentucky in 1978. And I can honestly say from day one, Frankfort was my city, my home. This community welcomed me and my family with open arms. For 32 years, I've had the privilege to own a successful small business serving Franklin and surrounding counties. This platform has provided excellent opportunity for ongoing public discourse with the citizens of the district. My career spans 40 plus years in the service industry, and I aspire to continue serving this community as your next state senator. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for your opening statements. And now we're going to move into our panelist questions, and we're going to kick it off with Kristen Cantrell asking the first question, and the first response will come from Mr. Crawford.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. As all of you are well aware, our country is in a very polarized place right now, and we want to have a productive government here in the state of Kentucky. So how would you contribute to a culture that has a more civil and constructive dialogue?
Well, I believe that we would have to work together. All of us are going to have to come to some form of middle ground and find some way to work together instead of just bickering over the issues. So if we continue to do that, then we're never going to get anywhere. We're going to have to work with one another. We're going to have to open the economy back up. We're going to have to get everything rolling again, because if we don't, we're just going down a slippery slope that's just going to end in Kentucky bankrupt. And I don't see how in the world we're ever going to recover from that if we don't open everything back up again.
Thank you so much. We'll move to Katy Howard next.
Well, you know, good ideas are not Republican ideas or Democrat ideas. And I am a listener, and I pride myself in surrounding myself with good people on a team. So I am open to all ideas. At the same time, the voters, if elected, they have endorsed a Republican candidate and a Republican platform. And with that, the majority party does set policy. But I am more than happy to listen. I do not have my heels dug in on any issues except the right to life, I think. That is one that I would not compromise on. But other than that, I'm open to all good ideas and finding solutions to problems.
Thank you very much. Adrienne Southworth, you're up next.
Thanks for the great question. You know, when I was in the Lieutenant Governor's office, one of the things I did that most people don't know about is addressing constituent concerns. We had a constituent office that handled issues, but they were more of a basic format. And whenever there was something way too advanced that nobody knew what to do with, it kind of landed on my desk. And so I have to hear and understand what people are saying in order to know where to take them in the labyrinth of state agencies to figure out how do we make a solution for them. And as a public servant, you serve everybody. It doesn't matter if you agree with the person or not. But the best compliments I got, which I got often, was, I can't believe you work for the government. Normally we don't get helpful people like this. So I can plan to do that again.
Thank you so much. Kalin Stutler, your response to the same question.
Well, personally, like I said, I'm a Republican who believes in the platform as it's written, but as someone who's watched the legislature for years, about 90% of anything passed is bipartisan in the first place. We concentrate on the 10% that divides us, and some of those gaps just won't be fixed. I mean, especially when it comes to pro-life, it's a division issue. It's not going to change, but you also have to recognize that this district, every county in this district, still has more Democrats in it than Republicans. So you're going to have to reach across that divide to make things work for the community, and I'm definitely willing to do that. I know plenty. I grew up here. I know this town, and I know plenty of Democrats in this community, and I'm willing to work with them.
Thank you very much. And Linda Thompson, your response.
Okay. Well, I built a business in Frankfort, a hair salon, and I built a business with predominantly Democrats. I've owned that business for over 35 years, and some of my dearest friends are of the Democratic Party. And we've always had, and I feel we've always had wonderful mutual respect for each other. First of all, we are Americans. We are Americans. We are citizens of the United States of America. And even though we have differences, we have respect for one another. And what I usually say, if somebody gets contentious, I may disagree with them. But I say, isn't it wonderful that we live in the United States of America where we can respectfully disagree? I can respect your opinion, you can respect mine, but in the end, we are citizens of the United States of America, and we're thankful.
We're out of time, unfortunately. But thank you all so much for your answers. Thank you, Kristen, for the question.
Thank you.
So we will now move to Kathy Lindsay for our next question, and the first response will come from Katy Howard on this one.
Great. Well, I'll follow up from Kristen's question. We talked about the need to be more agreeable, and that we're not really a divided government. But here we are a divided government in that we have a Republican-led General Assembly with a Democrat governor. So again, the need to be agreeable now is more important than ever as we're moving forward. We're all together facing a global pandemic. So what are two issues on which you agree with Governor Beshear or the Democrats in the General Assembly?
What are two issues that I agree on? Let's see. Well, one is on the education front. It certainly is critical for the long term of Kentucky. And I think that we have overlooked some of the investment that needs to be made. I may disagree on the kind of investment that is and what needs to be done, but certainly education is a priority for our long-term health and growth. If we want a developed workforce, we're going to have to concentrate on that. Second, let me see. I think on criminal justice reform, I think, our jails are way overcrowded and we need to do something quickly about that.
Thank you so much. Adrienne Southworth, your response.
Absolutely. There's tons of things I agree on with all sorts of people. My political motto is everybody's your friend on something, nobody's your friend on everything. And with the Democrats in the General Assembly, I've worked with multiple times on many issues, but I'm just trying to pick a few key ones here. The pension system is a huge debt that we have to pay off. I've heard some people suggest that it's an idea that, we somehow try to skate out of this debt by some illegitimate means, and I don't believe in that. We need to pay it off. We need to get on it quickly. Another item is the criminal justice situation. I feel like I've spent half my time in policy working on criminal justice, and I have so much in common with so many people that really want to do what's best for our public safety. And it doesn't mean spending tons of money and putting a bunch of people in jail all the time.
Thank you.
Kalin Stutler, your response to the same question.
Well, first one, I don't know if he agrees on it with, so I can't answer that. But it's very bipartisan, and that is the local option sales tax. That was a bipartisan bill. Unfortunately, it failed because Democrats did play politics by the co-sponsors not end up voting for it. But I believe it'll come back around. So I think that's a bipartisan effort. I do agree with. The second one is I do agree with expanded gambling. I know the citizens of this district do support that, and unfortunately, there's 3 candidates in this race that do not, and that's a big issue in this district, especially when it's related to pension funding.
Thank you
much. Linda Thompson, you're up next.
Well, I think I certainly would agree with Governor Beshear in his support of public school teachers. I come from a family of public school teachers. I have the highest regard for them, and so I would certainly agree with Governor Beshear. They need a raise. They need to be supported. We need to help them every possible way that we can legislatively. And then secondly, I think we could agree on economic development. I don't know completely his plans, but I'm sure that we would agree on creating a climate that would bring new industry and economic development. When the tide rises, all boats are going to rise. So I think that we would certainly agree on economic development.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Crawford, we'll wrap this one up with you.
Okay. First and foremost, I have to go with education. Education reform is the one of my number one priorities. The teachers need the power to educate. They need the money to educate them, and they need to be guaranteed a good retirement when they're done, because the children are our future. If they're not able to do their jobs and do them properly, then we're never going to get anywhere as a state. The second one is the sports betting. I agree with the sports betting. That will bring in more funding for our economy. It will help to expand infrastructure. It will help to repair roads. It will help to pay the pension system back as well. So both of those are top priorities and very important to the state and our budget.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much, and thank you, Kathy, for the question. We'll now move to State Journal publisher Steve Stewart for his question, and we will begin the responses with Adrienne Southworth.
Good evening, you all, and thank you for your participation tonight. This is a healthy exercise in democracy here, so I appreciate you putting yourselves forth, giving the voters good information. You all are vying to succeed one of the legendary names in Kentucky politics, former governor and current state senator Julian Carroll. I'm going to guess that as Republicans, you all have a long list of policy differences with Governor Carroll, but just give the voters one issue on which they can expect a very different representation in the General Assembly than what they would have received from Governor Carroll on that issue. Just one issue apiece.
Well, Governor Carroll has been what I would consider fairly quiet in the district. In Franklin County particularly, we do see him, at the grocery store or other places. But in the farther reaches of the district, they never see him at all. And I'm someone that has traveled the state for years, working with people and legislators on bills specifically, including other training events and things like that. So I am very much into hearing from the constituents and actually following through. I know that I've talked to him before about issues, but maybe they don't end up really getting moved forward. or really feel like I was totally heard. So that's something that people will see a huge difference with me.
Mr. Stutler, you go right ahead.
Well, first of all, a brief story. Julian Carroll is really the whole reason my family moved to Frankfort. 1984, my dad met him in Indiana, and Dad, he said, you should move to Frankfort and start your business. So that's where we moved, and it was because of Julian Carroll. So I've known Mr. Carroll for my entire time here. But where I would differ from him is I would take more of a lead in representing the state employee needs. And what I mean by that is, again, that comes back to having representation in the majority party. There are needs that they have, especially when it relates to their pension and just having their voice heard. And they were kind of muted out over the teachers in the past. Now the teachers had needs as well, but I would take that lead for the state employees.
Thank you very much. Linda Thompson, your response.
Yes, well, I think also I was friends with Governor Carroll and Charlene Carroll. In fact, I was her hairdresser for several years. So lovely family, and I do appreciate his service. I will say though, he's been in office since 2004, and so I think I would disagree with maybe in that length of time that he allowed the can to be kicked down the road where pensions were concerned. And so I think that I would disagree on maybe his policy since 2004 to allow the Kentucky to turn into one of the worst funded pension systems in the United States.
Thank you very much. Mr. Crawford, your response.
Well, I don't know the man personally. I do know the fact that he was governor when I was born, and I'm 46 years old. And in all of those 46 years, I really don't know of anything special that I've ever heard of that he did for the state, other than just allowing things to just continually get worse and worse. And that's what I'm here for. That's what I want to stop, is kicking, as she said, kicking the can down the road. We need to stop that. We need to start doing things. We need to get on it. We need to get this country and this state back on track so that we can continue and sorry, I lost my train of thought, so that we can continue to be the great nation that we are.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Howard will wrap this question up with you.
So for the last 10 years, I've been watching Julian Carroll and following him in the Senate. And frankly, I've been amazed, and I'm going to say somewhat appalled, by his lack of connection with the voters over the last 10 years. He has a great reputation, and people know him from way back when. But over the last 10 years or so, he really has not been out with the citizens of the district. I very, very rarely meet anybody that has ever met him or heard of him. People remember him from Frankfort from years ago when he started in government, and especially as a governor. But I would be a legislator that is connected with the citizens here, that is out and about, as I have been for the last 7 months.
Thank you all very much. We will move back to Kristen for our next round of questions, and we will begin the responses with Mr. Stutler.
So we've had a lot of protests at the Capitol lately, and I'm curious, do you think that there were any legislators that played a role in developing those protests? And I'm curious about your reaction to the effigy of Governor Beshear.
Well, that's kind of two questions. So let me go back to your first one. Did the people play a role? Yeah, they were part of it. They showed up to speak. I mean, and they need to take responsibility for their actions, whether good or bad. And I'm not judging them either way. As far as the effigy, it was absolutely abhorrent and it's disgusting. I had something out on Facebook before the Senate and the House even put out a statement. And there's only been between myself, Katy, and Linda have actually said anything that I know of online. So I question where some of the other two candidates are. But mine was a personal statement rather than just sharing what the Senate had to say. So it's disgusting. It hurts our community, and it's a bad look for the Republican Party.
Linda Thompson, your response.
Yes. Well, it's a shame that a group can't gather for a peaceful assembly, and then something like this take place. One person, one bad apple can ruin it for the whole crowd. So I thought it was appalling. There is absolutely no place in public discourse for anything like this. And I'm just so sorry that it happened. I understand the gentleman that did it. He's lost his place of employment. And so I'm appalled. It's disheartening. And I'm very sorry that it happened at our state capitol. And I hope that this is an example that this doesn't happen again, that we can be respectful and have public assembly.
Thank you very much. Mr. Crawford, you're up next.
Well, I have to say, every one of these displays like that are just absolutely deplorable. They do it with Trump. They've done it with Andy Beshear. They've done it all over the country. Just about every time that there's a gathering, somebody does something ignorant, and then it makes us all look bad when all we're doing is just fighting for our rights and our freedoms, and to bring across the message to the governor that we're tired of all of this, that we need to get the economy rolling again. But at the same time, that they just you can't run up in a movie theater and yell fire. And it's basically the same thing. You can't be hanging up dolls of people, and these effigies and stuff. It's absolutely deplorable.
Ms. Howard?
The people that are responsible are the people that did it, and not anybody else that were there. Legislators have a right to express their freedoms of speech and to represent their district, and none of them incited violence. The person that was responsible is the person that hung the effigy. I think it's a very sad commentary that people are reduced to that kind of despicable conduct, really poor conduct in a public place, especially, that they feel like there's no other way to have their voice heard than that. So not only did this result in his firing, but he lost any seat at the table he could have had. And I think the whole thing is a sad commentary on our divide today.
And we'll wrap up this question with Mrs. Southworth.
Yes, I'm not really sure exactly who all has organized every single protest. I don't know them all personally, but I do not believe I'm aware of any legislators that have organized any protests or any of the activities. Certainly legislators have presented themselves at various times, and that's great. They're at the Capitol. The legislators are the people's voice. As for a person who decides to maybe go past the edge of where other people would want to go, as a public servant, I found I have to represent everybody's views and or at least listen to everybody. And that includes people I totally disagree with. And the Supreme Court says flag burning is protected by the First Amendment. I don't agree with doing that myself, but it's something we have to know our constituents are involved in, and we do need to represent everybody.
Thank you all so much for your responses, and thank you, Kristen. We will move to our next round with Kathy Lindsay asking the next question, and we will start the responses with Linda Thompson.
Thank you. Economic damage caused by the coronavirus will force more than $450 million in cuts to Kentucky's general fund. Now more than ever, it is critical for Kentucky to produce more revenue. What ideas would you support to generate more revenue? And would these include legalizing marijuana and expanded sports betting or casino gambling?
Well, I know we're in a tough situation. I mean, the highest unemployment in the country, and it looks like we may have to borrow $1.5 to $2 billion. I know we've got big things in front of us, but let me first talk about the sports wagering bill. I approach legislation asking two questions. What does the bill do? And number two, is the process right? Well, in this case, the bill expands gambling, but the process is wrong. The process is using legislation, a bill to expand gambling, and the correct process is an amendment to the Constitution. So I would support an amendment to the Constitution. Let's change it. If we want to expand gambling, then let's amend the Constitution to do so. Now, in the case of medical marijuana, my position on that is medical marijuana should be researched in clinical trials. And
unfortunately, we are out of time for your response. Sorry about that. We're going to move to Mr. Crawford for his answer.
I've already spoken to the sports gambling. Everybody already knows that I'm for that. As far as the cannabis goes, yes, I would be in agreement with legalizing that. Colorado, in their first year of legalized cannabis, had an $18 billion surplus in tax revenue. Now, that would balance the budget. It would create jobs. It would add infrastructure. It would repair that dilapidated bridge out on 62 by Spencer County. It would do lots and lots of things for this state. And I have said before that I believe Kentucky will end up being the last state that does it. And I would like to see that be untrue. I would like to see that we get that going and then actually expand it into Eastern Kentucky and allow Eastern Kentucky to grow it for distribution to the dispensaries. That way we get it coming and going. We've got Texas.
Sorry, we are out of time. We'll be Katy Howard next.
Well, first, I really hope that we don't concentrate on raising taxes as kind of a panic kind of solution to the crisis that we're in, that we keep our focus on creating jobs, bringing new businesses into Kentucky, and especially encouraging entrepreneurs to start new businesses. I am not in favor of legalizing marijuana, period. In terms of sports betting, I am concerned about the process. I am not opposed to gambling myself. And I would, if it was a constitutional amendment, I would vote for it. I am concerned about whether it is really within the rights to enact it as legislation rather than as constitutional amendment.
Thank you. We're going to move to Adrienne Southworth.
Thank you. I think the thing that we need to focus on when we're discussing the expansion of gambling is look at the lottery that we started in 1988. The lottery by statute is supposed to be getting 35% yield every year, and they've only been getting 25% every year since it was started. And so we're leaving 10% on the table. And with a $1 billion budget, that's $100 million a year that we are not getting because the lottery board is not efficiently operating the way they were intended to operate. So that's a place that I would look where we already have loss that things are seeping through the cracks. As far as marijuana, it's a plant that God created, and I believe that we should be able to do something with it, although the processes thus far suggested do lack a little bit of stuff, but I will work on that as a high priority.
Thank you very much, and we'll wrap up with Kalin Stutler's answer.
So medicinal marijuana, that is a yes. People have been smoking it, using it for thousands of years, and I don't think we need any more research on it. We know exactly what it does. Recreational, I do not agree with, and that is based on the potency levels of it. It has increased 3, 10, 20% compared to what it was 20 years ago, and I believe it still needs to be a controlled substance, but it does have recreational uses. As far as sports betting, does not need a constitutional amendment. That was debated in 1891 in the Kentucky Constitution, that a chance would require a constitutional amendment. So casino gambling, yes, but the people support it here, so I would support it.
Thank you all for your answers, and thank you, Kathy. So we will now go to Steve Stewart for the next round of questions, and we will start with Mr. Crawford for the response.
What's the first bill you'll file after you're elected?
Well, that would be to expand education, to get the teachers a raise, to try and get the pension set up where it is solvent again, and then create an extension course or a high school class for financial literacy. If you teach these people math and science and so forth, but then they can't figure out how to fill out a job education or job application or get a loan or anything like that, then they're never going to be able to succeed in life. So I would like to be able to teach the kids how to do these things.
I could do a quick follow-up on that one. You said stabilize the pension fund. More specifically, what would be in that bill to accomplish that?
Well, mainly just the add to find spots in the budget where we can add money to it, to cut things that aren't necessarily needed and to add to the educational system itself.
Thank you very much. We'll move to Katy Howard.
I am one of the things I've spent the most time on during the campaign is talking to school board members, teachers, superintendents of schools. And I can tell you there seems to be a lot of confusion about who is accountable for what between the school-based, site-based councils, the school boards, and the authority of the principal at the local school. It seems to be very confused. And who is really responsible for delivering the results of good test scores and graduating seniors. So I would probably look at that first to see whether there's confusion in the statute right now, overlapping responsibilities, or are the right people really making the right decisions, have the correct responsibilities.
Quick follow-up, would that first bill seek to eliminate the site-based councils or reduce their power?
No, not at all. I'm suggesting that are the correct people in a position to make do they have the best view into the decision making? Is the right person hiring and firing the principal? Are the right people making choices on curriculum? Or is it just kind of willy-nilly? There's a lot of skilled educators in Kentucky, and are the best people making these really critical decisions for our children.
Thank you.
We'll move to Adrienne Southworth next.
Well, the one we can't avoid next year is the redistricting. So with the census coming up, that's my first mandatory priority. I believe that we have a major issue in our redistricting every time, and this affects us for the next 10 years, where some people really almost get left out of the mix because we're pushing communities together that don't really have things in common. We're cutting up communities in multiple pieces that shouldn't be, just for political gain and power by certain politicians maybe that have, a need to make sure their neighborhood is cut around for whatever reason. So I really feel like making something similar as the Supreme Court districts that we currently have, where they have to be geographically consolidated and they have to reduce the number of cuts that we make through single county cities and what have you. That's a high priority for me next year.
Follow up on that. Some states are appointing independent commissions to do the first drafts of redistricting plans while leaving the ultimate authority with the legislature. Would you be agreeable to that?
Well, I think that that's, one more layer, and it's one of those things where we are and where we would like to be. Where I'd like it to be is that all public servants serve the public. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So do independent commissions serve the public? A lot of times they're political appointees. And the more layers we create, sometimes we never solve the problem, but certainly the intent is correct there.
Kalin Stutler, your response to the first bill you would file.
The first bill I would file is actually very Frankfort and Franklin County friendly, and I know it's one that you agree with me on, Steve, because you wrote an op-ed about it, and I wrote one about it too. And that's a repeal of a bill that says that if the state is renting a property, they are considered the equitable owner. that negatively affects our community because it goes against the Constitution of Kentucky, that a property must be publicly owned and for public use to get a tax exemption, a property tax exemption. Right now, we have a building downtown with just Mayo Underwood building, and then the building over on Sauer Boulevard behind the credit union. Both are getting unconstitutional tax exemptions, and I will file that every time until it's passed.
Kalin, quick follow-up on that. Those are so-called P3s. Do you have any philosophical objections to the so-called P3s, public-private partnerships, other than the tax-exempt status?
No, actually, I think they can do some good. I just don't want them to breach the Constitution as this one does, and it's breaching our state constitution. So public-private partnerships are good in a lot of ways, and they can help communities. But this has already been done. In EKU had a building built, and they ended up winning and got some back pay. So even if we don't get some back pay, we should at least use it for leverage to increase the Frankfort in lieu of taxes. That actually, I think Julian Carroll was the one that got for us, but it's anemic. $195,000 a year for the amount of tax revenue Franklin County's losing. Our community is going down the drain. And that is Frankfort. That's not the whole district, but I'm telling you, I'm aware of it, and we need to fight for that.
Thank you very much. And Linda Thompson, we will wrap up this question with you about the first bill you would file.
Yes, well, unequivocally, the first bill that I would file would be the Born Alive Protection Bill on day one. And I will, defend, that's part of my platform. Number one is to defend life and defend the unborn. So that would be my very first bill that I would file. I would file it early, and so that it would definitely get through, get passed, and we could override a veto should we need to.
And a quick follow-up on that, Governor Beshear, as you probably know, says that's not necessary, that those protections already exist. How would your bill more specifically address that?
Well, I don't think those protections still exist. I mean, that they may already exist, but there have been exceptions where infants were not helped. And I believe that this just further reinforces and makes Kentucky a stronger right to life state.
Thank you all very much for your responses, and thank you, Steve, for the question. I believe we have time for one more question before you guys do your closing statement. So I'm going to turn it over to Kristen for the final round of questions, and then that responses will start with Katy Howard.
So obviously we're going to be in a reopening, recovering economy. And other than the unemployment issue, which is obvious, what do you think is the number one issue facing the majority of citizens in our district? And what is a specific action you would take to address it?
I think one of the things that everybody is going to face is the situation financially we have in the state. Unfortunately, we were only had a few days to pass a budget, really at the end of the session, and not being able to redo it once we had better revenue numbers probably means that we have a budget that is untenable right now. And there's going to have to probably be some drastic cuts that are going to affect everybody in the Commonwealth. So we just have to be prepared for that. It's probably going to be a painful process ahead, but we can get out of this. It was only a year ago that we had record revenues and a record budget surplus. So we just need to stay the course and be strong and solve this problem.
Adrienne Southworth, your response.
I think if I'm a business owner trying to open up, I'm very concerned about the unknown. The fear of the unknown is debilitating, because what we've heard things out of our government agencies is, if you don't follow X, Y, and Z, we're going to shut you back down, or you're out of compliance, you're going to have major issues. And if you're a business either starting up or trying to restart, it's scary. And so what ifs are everywhere. I think that we need to clarify exactly what we mean, crystallize the law so that people can actually understand it, and limit the scope of, at whim type of regulations that can just pop out of nowhere with no notice or hardly any notice and scare people or spook them to where they can't know what to expect and be able to follow through with that.
Kalin Stutler, you're up next.
Kristen, I hate to ask you, can you repeat the question for me? I was shuffling through a piece of paper there.
Oh. Okay, yes. So obviously we're in a recovering, reopening economy. So other than the obvious issue of unemployment, financial strain, what do you think is the number one issue facing our citizens, and what action would you suggest to address it?
That's still the pension. Our pension is probably anemic right now. I mean, it's probably down in the single digits as far as the non-hazardous. So again, I believe in conservative principles of lowering taxes, and that increases revenue. Reagan did it in the 80s and revenue went up. Trump did it just a few years ago and revenue went up. And Matt Bevin did it just a few years ago and revenue went up. However, those are incremental. It is a time that we have to pass something with some real meat behind it, and that's going to be expanded gambling. There is not very many other options. We need a shot in the arm to inject into our pension systems and our government, and not just a regiment of vitamins of regular tax decreases that help us out.
Linda Thompson, your response.
Well, the best remedy is to get Kentucky open, get us open and back to work. The Governor Beshear made a pact with these surrounding states, and that lasted about 5 minutes. Ohio, Indiana, Tennessee, they've gone up to open up their businesses, open up their restaurants. Our citizens, they're going to Indiana to go out to eat. They're going to Tennessee to go to a movie. And so if we need to open up and get it going, I know from my perspective in my business, we're limited. We can only have part of our employees there, do only half of our clients, and our hands are tied behind our back. We need to go with it, and let's open it up.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Crawford, your response will wrap us up on this one.
Well, we need to protect the small businesses. Some small businesses aren't able to comply with these outrageous rules, especially a restaurant. How in the world am I supposed to wear a mask into a restaurant and eat? I can't. What am I supposed to do? This? It's just not feasible. We need to protect them. We need to let them open back up. If you're afraid, wear a mask. If you're not, then go out, get your hair cut, go to eat, do these things. We can't just keep passing draconian laws and expecting everybody to follow them. It's not constitutional, and it never will be.
Thank you very much. And we actually have time for one more question before you guys give your closing statement. So I'm going to toss it to Kathy Lindsay to do one more question.
Great. Oh, I'm not muted. Okay, good. Citing the COVID-19 risk, there is a federal lawsuit that was filed this week that is in favor of expanding mail-in voting to the general election in November. Is that something you would support? And would you do you understand why people should be given every opportunity to vote in reality of the fear that they face?
And who did we start with last time? Was that, okay, it was Katy. So Ms. Southworth, you go first, please.
Mail-in voting has been part of Kentucky's law for some time as an absentee process, which requires an excuse. So one of the excuses is a medical emergency, which is currently what our election is operating under. And for those people who actually have a legitimate medical emergency, they would still be eligible regardless of whether there were any law changes. I don't support any other further law changes in this situation because, frankly, most people that I know don't have a virus and aren't concerned about getting virus. Our community has very few people that are actually in danger or having an actual emergency. I do believe that we need to get our elections cleaned up immensely, and mail-in voting does have some other options for misuse than just what meets the eye at the polls. So it's important that we keep that as safe as we can until we know more.
Thank you. Kalin Stutler, your response.
I don't support mail-in voting, but I mean, I agree with Adrienne on that. We're in an emergency, and expanded absentee ballots is okay right now. I know it's not the best thing, but a couple things to note about that lawsuit is that they didn't sue the state. They sued Secretary of State Michael Adams and the governor in order to get the governor to expand mail-in votings for November. It was not this, the photo ID wasn't brought up, which Adrienne doesn't agree with because she showed up to vote or to talk about, but it had nothing to do with the constitutionality of that photo ID bill. And it's really just a delay that's not going to happen. It'll probably get dismissed. But I don't support any more changes to our election system.
Linda Thompson, we'll move to you next for your response.
Well, of course, this is change, and everybody is resistant to change. But, you know, I think that when the voters, when they experience this and they find that maybe it was more convenient, gave them more opportunity to vote, you know, Kentucky may like it. They may like it now, and we'll see how it goes. I will have to say I explicitly trust Secretary of State Michael Adams, and Michael said we're not going to have a mail-in ballot California style. Also, the signatures, when you show your driver's license, they have to match. So as long as it's safe and secure and it's more inclusive, I wouldn't be opposed to it. And I think Kentucky's going to be surprised. They may like this when we do it. So that's my position.
Thank you very much. Kirk Crawford, your response.
Well, if I can stand 6 feet apart at Walmart to buy groceries, I can stand 6 feet apart to vote. I don't see any reason why we can't just go out to vote. Now, the mail-in ballots, you know, it is a crisis. It is a pandemic. If you want to do that, then that's fine. Go right ahead and do that. That is your right. Vote by mail. Go up in Anderson County, starting June 8th, they're going to start voting through their county clerk's drive-through or their walk-up window. So a lot of other counties may want to follow suit with that. But I'm perfectly fine with the mail-in voting, but I would personally like to go down and show my ID and get my ballot and vote just like I would any other election time that there ever was.
Thank you. And Ms. Howard will wrap up with you.
Well, unusual times call for unusual measures. So I believe that expanded absentee voting is a good thing right now. It requires the voter to call to affirm who they are and request the ballot to be sent to them. If they don't trust the mail back process, they can just easily drop their ballot off or in-person vote. I will be in-person voting on June 8th. But I do not support the idea of sending everybody a ballot, whether they request one or not. I know from the work that I'm doing during the campaign by phone or door-to-door canvassing that the rolls are not clean, and Kentucky has actually been sued to that effect. So the suit claims that 48 counties have more registered voters than eligible citizens. So I would not be endorsing just blanket vote by mail.
Thank you all so much for your responses, and thank you, Kathy, for the question. So now we are going to move. Thank you, panelists, for all of your questions too. We're going to move to closing statements. So just a reminder, everyone has 1 minute for their closing statement, and you should just be stating your objectives in the race. No new issues should be brought up. And we're going to start with Kalin Stutler.
In closing, we're looking for the best Republican in this race. And as I've stated, and I haven't heard anybody else state, I've read the Republican Party platform. And that's what we're looking for, somebody who can meet the needs of that platform. And that's who I am. I also want to bring up a few issues. I've heard a lot of people say that spiritually they've been called to do this, and I don't doubt that. I heard Joe Gravis say it too 2 years ago when he was running. But Bible says all are called, but few are chosen. But in this case, only one's going to be chosen. We need to start thinking with the end in mind instead of just what's happening right now. This is a very diverse district still. It can be won by a Republican, and I believe I'm the Republican that can do that. And I don't think really that any of the other candidates can. I know they're going to say they can, but I don't believe they can. And that's why I think it's time for some real change, and I am the guy that can do it.
Thank you so much. Linda Thompson, your 1 minute closing statement, please.
Okay. Well, undoubtedly, there will be a wide range of issues making their way through the Kentucky Senate in 2021. In the wake of COVID-19, paramount among these will be budget shortfalls. And I can assure you, I am ready to provide leadership that reflects our conservative values. I can go to work on day one with Senator McDaniels on the state budget. The relationships that I have with the Senate majority will be invaluable as we face these unprecedented challenges. As your state senator, I will work every day to put Kentucky first. I am a Trump Republican and a small business owner. With the experience, we need to stand strong for our district. I am endorsed by Kentucky Right to Life. I am a staunch defender of the Second Amendment, and I would be most honored to have your vote in the upcoming primary election.
Thank you very much. Cleaver Crawford, your 1 minute closing statement, please.
You'll have to excuse me. I've always been dying to say this. My fellow Americans, as your senator, I will work for you. I am not campaign fundraising. I do not take any money from anyone. I am going to work for you, the people. I will protect your rights. I will protect your citizenship. I will make sure that voting is fair. I will always make sure that you come first, not your friend, not special interests, not anything of that nature. I would like to work for you. Now, I know that I'm probably the rookie here. I don't have a lot of experience in politics. I know it's a dirty game. I'm willing to play it for you because I, as an American, am sick and tired of politicians whittling our rights away and saying about anything that they want to say in order to get elected. As your senator, I will work for you. God bless you and God bless America.
Thank you very much. Katy Howard, you can go ahead with your closing statement.
Yes, I believe that I am the best candidate with the skills and experience to hit the ground running. I have read the Republican Party platform, and I am a true conservative, and I am endorsed by Kentucky Right to Life. I am, in my business life, I was known as a change agent, a problem solver, and a doer, not a talker. So I'm very comfortable working with large teams of people with very diverse agendas and solving big problems. I know how to build coalitions of people working together, how to surround myself with the best and the brightest, how to treat root causes of problems and not symptoms of problems, all while keeping my eye on the final goal. And in addition to my business experience, I'm a servant to the community. So I know how to be quiet and listen and then be savvy enough to take the people's input and use it for the benefit of their lives. So I look forward to staying connected with the citizens in District 7.
Thank you so much. And we'll wrap up with the closing statement from Adrienne Southworth.
Thank you all for putting this on. I'm very excited to have a Zoom forum. You know, in my time in the legislature, I saw at least 500 issues, different issues a year, about 1,500 pieces of legislation come flying at you. And it's a lot to keep up with. At the beginning of the session, you're just trying to get a handle on what all everybody is doing. By the end of the session, it's a matter of minutes, what changes have just been made. You have to have a large memory for that, and that's what I have a lot of experience doing. Next year, we have to deal with a one-year budget. That's a very unprecedented thing. Not often do we have someone get elected and then have to go right into an executive budget. We are losing the only legislator that has any executive branch experience, but I'm the only candidate who is running who does have executive branch experience. And when we're making the decisions for a gigantic government, full of agencies and you don't really have any real life experience in seeing how those agencies operate, it's important that we actually have that voice knowing what's going on. So I ask for your vote on June 23rd or before.
Thank you all so much. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our candidates and our partners, Frankfort Plant Board and Cable 10, Froggy and Passport Radio, and the State Journal. We hope, on behalf of the Frankfort Area Chamber of Commerce, we hope that this forum has given you all the information that you need as voters. And to vote on either June 23rd or before, in-person voting is starting soon, and you can request your mail-in ballot now. So we hope that everybody gets out and votes in June.